Traders, we are currently in the middle of the first meaningful decline in the copper price we have seen in probably years. Now, if this is the beginning of a larger decline, believe you me, I will be making a pretty good-sized deposit, and then possibly an additional deposit. Now, did you really think we're going to go all this way and not mention the red metal? Traders, too much upside here. You can't ignore it. We must talk about it, and we must go deep. I will spend as much time as I need to on this video, but let's go ahead and get into it. First off, a disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor. Don't do anything I say. If you have a financial advisor, I'll tell you what, go and ask them about copper mining stocks. See what they say. Look at the horrified look that comes over their face. But I digress. In this video, what we're going to do, talk about what copper actually does. There are uses you are probably aware of. There are some uses you might not be, but it's going to set up the rest of the video because then we're going to talk about the overall demand, then the supply, and then how I'm actually playing it. Pretty simple, but there are heavy components to all four of these. So let us continue. Now, copper is awesome. We need it for everything. We would not live the way we do, even if you're in a more developed country. I'm telling you, life would not be as great as it is with all the technology we have and all of the comforts we have without copper. Now, you need it for all the old stuff. Everything you see right here contains varying degrees of copper. Cookware in particular, even if you don't have a copper pan, there's copper in most pots and pans because it's such a great conductor of heat. The only better conductor of heat on the periodic table that I'm aware of is silver, and silver is super expensive. And once you use it, it gets used up and it goes to silver heaven. So not very economical. You need copper in these situations. Wiring is the one I highlighted because that is right now, I think, what 45% of all copper mined is actually used for, give or take. I don't know if I have that right, but I know that's definitely the biggest use right there. But we don't just need it for the old stuff. We need it for the new stuff too. All the stuff that's coming down the pike. All the stuff that is government mandated. So you have electronic vehicles. It's going to need a lot of copper. We'll dive into that a little more sooner. Solar, all those solar panels need copper. Can't make them without it. Same with wind. And then if we're going to electrify the nation and electrify the world, which is the end goal for some of these people, we're going to need huge electrical grids. We're going to need battery power, copious amounts of copper in all of those things. And then all of the new electronics that are coming down the pike in the future, all of the new technological inventions in telecommunications, in gaming, all of that stuff needs copper. Now, keep in mind, too, a lot of developing countries are developing very quickly. A lot of places that didn't have an electrical infrastructure are going to be getting one, probably, in the next 10 to 15 years. And they're going to need all of those things in place that most of us already have. So we take that stuff for granted. They're going to need it for the first time. It takes a lot of copper. And spoiler alert, we don't have a whole lot of it right now, and we're going to have a really hard time getting it in the future. This is a problem. Now, you might be saying, well, we'll just figure a way to replace it with something else. No, we won't. It doesn't work that way. There is just no really good replacement for it. Like I said, silver's more conductive, but copper's $4 a pound. Silver's $26 an ounce. And once you use it up, it goes away. It's a terrible replacement. You do have aluminum in wiring. As a kid who grew up in a house with aluminum wiring, I'll tell you right now, it sucks. Aluminum is much less conductive than copper is. And I guess that's fine for new homes because you can spend less on the home and you can keep the price down. But I feel sorry for the people moving in because that lack of efficiency costs a lot of money. And most of these places, especially the new technology that needs this stuff, can't afford to be unproductive. Solar and wind already have issues being as productive as fossil fuels. Right now, they don't even come close. Do you think they can really afford to substitute the copper in their solar panels and in their wind turbines and in their electrical grids for aluminum? It's not happening. Copper is king. All of the old stuff is going to need it. All of this new stuff is going to need it. So there's nothing you can do. We're stuck with it for better or for worse. So we need to look to the future now. Future demand. What is that going to look like? Well, this question, fortunately for us investors, has pretty much been answered. So rarely does this happen. But governments have already said, we are electrifying the planet. We are moving to clean energy. And we are going to need lots of copper for this, for better or for worse. Now, is this whole clean energy narrative a bit of a fairy tale? It is. I mean, they think we're going to get the world looking like this in 10, 15 years. That's not how it really works. Governments full of utopian ideas that just never, ever work. But it doesn't mean it's not happening, because they said it's going to happen. And companies have already followed suit. It's in motion. Traders, pay attention. So in the United States alone, California, because they're ridiculous, said every car on the road must be an electric vehicle by 2035. Different states have already said, a lot of states have said 100% carbon-free electricity by 2030 at the earliest. I think that was Rhode Island. And then one state, I think Arizona, went all the way to 2070, but most of them were in that 2030, 2045 range. But this is just the United States. Other Western countries are doing this too. Now, Europe is taking a bit of a less ridiculous approach. They want to move from 20% to 32% carbon-free electricity by 2030, which is very conservative by the standards we've already seen on this slide, but that's still over 50% jump in only 10 years. They have already told us what's going to happen. Now, I'd said before that I think there's going to come a time where they realize that this is not a workable solution. But I think it's going to take them a long time to figure that out. I think this whole process is already going to be well in motion before that full reality really hits us. So companies have already started this whole thing, and it's going to continue for probably decades, and it's going to need lots of copper. How much? Well, let's put it into perspective. Electronic vehicles. Let's kind of map this out. So your conventional combustion engine cars already take 55 pounds of copper in them on average. If you move up to a hybrid, so part electric, part combustion engine, then the copper damn near doubles up to 105 pounds. And then once you get a full electronic vehicle, you were looking at 165 pounds of copper. Now, there's no way these electric car makers, with all the competition ahead of them, are going to substitute copper for a less conductive metal just to keep the price down. These automakers must also be able to compete on performance and environmental sustainability as well. So there's no getting out of this. So they're going to need copper, and just in this industry alone, it's going to triple in some places. And I don't think this is just going to be the West. Countries, serial polluters, countries like China, Southeast Asia are finally coming around on this too. I don't know what their timetable is, but safe to say, copper is going to be in high demand just on what we have seen already. Now, doesn't stop there. That was just a little bit of all of these things we're going to need. And I really do think that this is going to be the biggest one, future electronics. Developing countries are seeing their neighbors getting full electrical grids and first world infrastructure, and they're not going to rest until they have it too. And they're able to now. The rise of 5G and telecommunications has made this so. It's been great to see. Countries that have just been held down for so long finally creeping up out of the bottom. And in order to make that next step, this is what they're going to need. We have a lot of copper in this country already because it doesn't corrode that much. So we don't need it to build new stuff for us. But some of these countries will be completely starting over. Countries with tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions in some cases. Regardless if they're going 100% clean energy or even if most of it's going to be fossil fuels, it doesn't matter. They are going to need an electronic infrastructure. And you just don't get there without copper. So pretty safe to say, demand is going to be incredible going forward, the likes of which we have never seen before. So we better have enough copper to fulfill this demand, right? Well, about that. As far as right now goes, late June 2021, I'm getting conflicting reports. Some people say right now we have about 4 days worth of supply in copper in the United States for what we need to do. And keep in mind, we're not consuming very much right now. We're not building anything. We're still kind of locked down. Things haven't really gotten going yet. But I'm hearing anywhere from 4 days worth to about a year's worth. So take that for what it is. But we are not investing in the present. We trade the present. We are investing in the future. And the future's pretty frightening when it comes to copper supply. You cannot kick this can down the road. Either you have it or you don't build. Bottom line. Now, the one saving grace, and I mentioned this before, is once you have it, it doesn't get used up. It gets that green oxidation on the outside, and that oxidation often acts as a protective layer, so the rest of it does not oxidize. And so that's why copper can stick around for a very long time. You notice when they clean Lady Liberty, they don't clean it to the point to where they get the green off. You want that there. That's how things last for a very long time. Again, not like silver, which is more expensive, gets used up, and then you never see it again. Copper sticks around, so when you have it, you have it. But for the future, we are going to need much, much more. And that's where the problems start to come in. For starters, you may remember the spot gold and spot silver videos, how I talked a little bit about supply and demand of those two metals, how the ore grades are declining. So, in other words, how much actual silver can you get out of the ore? How much can you get out of the ground? That's measured, and those numbers are falling fast. As you can see here, expected to go down about 50% from where we are. Now, that would be okay if we could discover twice as many mines in the future. We have not discovered a new copper mine since 2015. There might not be any more. Those two factors alone can lead to a major supply crunch, assuming demand was on par with where it's been. As we've already determined, it's not going to be that way. Demand is going to shoot up by multiples. And what we are able to pull out of the ground is already about half of what it was back in 1990. Oh, but wait, there's more. As mentioned before, no new copper mines have been discovered. We are really, really trying, but so far, no success. And even if we did find them, it wouldn't even matter. It takes a very long time to mine, especially if you're brand new. The permitting alone could take 10 years. I mean, it's not a quick process. You don't just stop and then fire it back up and all of a sudden you have copper again. It doesn't work that way. Well, at least we've been hard at work mining a lot of copper in the last 10, 15 years? No, we haven't, actually, because there hasn't been a lot of investment in that sector. It's gone elsewhere. Very few copper miners have had the influx of cash they have needed to do their jobs properly. Then you add in the virus to where absolutely no ore has been coming out of the ground at all. So it's been getting a lot of capital lately, but it doesn't matter because it takes a very long time to get started again, for one, and then once you've gotten started, to get that ore out of the ground. And that ore nowadays sucks. It's nothing like it was back then. So we have the deck stacked against us in so many ways, but let me add on one more thing. Copper is only mined in a handful of countries around the world. And unfortunately, they're not the most reliable countries that you can count on. They're not always mined in countries where the government has at least some idea what they're doing. Some of these countries know they have a very hard to get and high in demand product to where most countries don't. And I have a feeling that they're going to be playing hardball. Some of them already are. They're going to get greedy. Thing is, if we really, really need copper or else we can't do anything, playing hardball with countries stronger than you is a really, really bad idea. Remember how I used to say before, America doesn't protect anybody anymore. If the world desperately needs copper and you're holding it all and you're not giving it away, expect consequences. Don't believe me? Look no further than the Middle East for the last 30 years. Even though the news won't say it to you, make no mistake, resources, and especially energy resources, have been the absolute root cause of just about every skirmish we have had on this planet for the last 30 years. The United States and Russia both have plenty of oil now. What's going to be there to take its place next? Well, if we're moving away from fossil fuels and into electrification, it's going to be copper. So let's take a look at these countries. Once again, from Statista.com. I don't have the whole title up on the screen. It says global copper reserves as of 2020 by country in millions of metric tons. Chile is number one. You might have heard me mention this back in the USD2 video, why I was kind of high on their currency. Because at the very end of the day, they're hard to invade and they have something the world is going to need. They're relatively stable. But lately my sentiment has changed a bit. We will get to that. Peru is going to be second, another big player, especially in the West. Australia, I don't really know much about their copper output and who they give it to, so we'll skip that. I can tell you that Russia, Mexico, United States, China, pretty much worthless. China and Russia are going to keep theirs. Mexico and the United States are going to keep it between themselves. You're not going to see much of that exported, I don't think. So really, we're relying on this right here. And again, I can't speak for Australia. And I will say that the West, the United States, Canada, Mexico, and most of Europe is going to need more than these countries can simply provide. So Chile and Peru are going to be major, major players going forward. But there are issues. Let's dive in. Does anybody know who this guy is? Seems like just your everyday guy. Maybe he's a farmer. Maybe he owns a ranch. Hard to say, right? This is your new president of Peru, Pedro Castillo. He is a socialist. Good idea, Peru. Socialist president. One big commodity that everybody wants. What could possibly go wrong, right? But here's where you have to do your research. Now, a lot of people see this and they panic. I own stock in a silver miner in Peru. And when this happened, that stock tanked. I'm down probably 40%. I'm hanging on to it. Because even though Castillo is a socialist, his Congress is not. So it's almost like, if President Biden got elected, but the House and the Senate are both Republican, it's like, oh, so what? He's not going to be able to do a whole lot. So I was fully aware of the risk when I bought the stock. It is my most risky stock play I pretty much have. So I'm okay with it. When you have stocks like that, you should expect them to be very volatile, to go up a lot and go down a lot. So that's just the risk I took, and I'm kind of in a wait-and-see approach with this. On to Chile. You saw in that graph just how big they were copper-wise compared to literally everybody else. They are going to be a major player going forward because they have the copper, and that's exactly what the world needs. And they will have more than enough to take care of themselves. Now it's just a matter of where else it goes. What a great problem to have. Future's looking bright, right? Oh, slow down. Their government doesn't know what they're doing either. They said, well, we know what we got. We got the nut flush. We're going to play it like we're all big and mighty, even though they're not. So what they decided to do is put a 3% extra tax on all copper and lithium coming out of that country. On top of that, here's the coup de grace. Any copper over $4 is getting a 75% tax. Completely ridiculous. High taxes really don't benefit anybody. in the end. Well, they actually do. They benefit the small, tiny group of elites at the very, very top. They get to put all that stuff in their pocket. But as far as literally everybody else goes, it's a losing proposition. Because here's what's going to happen. Companies aren't going to go to Chile, and some of those companies are going to leave Chile. Because no matter what, at 75% extra tax, it is no longer feasible for them to be there. It is no longer profitable for them to be there. Even a 10, 15% tax is going to scare some of these companies away, even if they've been there for 50, 60 years. You're going to go 75%? Are you out of your mind? On top of that, companies need foreign investment to operate. I'm not putting my money into something that's going to have to pay a 75% tax because that's going to be reflected in the stock price. That's going to affect me. Nobody wants to be a part of that. And I've already told you before how this industry had such a hard time getting foreign investment in it. It finally gets some, and then this nonsense happens. What's probably going to end up happening is foreign companies are going to leave along with foreign investment, and it's just going to end up getting nationalized. That might be the end goal for Chile anyway. I don't know. But nationalizing your main resource happens. And when it happens, it's never good. Governments typically don't know what they're doing in general, but they certainly don't know how to handle commodity companies. It's not what they've ever done, and now all of a sudden they are tasked with it. So it is always a disaster. It's anywhere from just like a complete disaster to a chaos in the streets, holy crap, Armageddon disaster. There's not much in between. It always ends up failing eventually. But people just don't seem to learn from it. I'm so ready to be super, super bullish on South America. It really could be the next great frontier for investing. But they just keep doing stuff like this. The generations now don't remember what it was like back when it was really, really bad. They're just going to have to learn the hard way, I guess. I don't know. Far be it from me to talk about politics in a place where I don't live. I'm just saying, as an investor, as somebody who wants the best for humanity, it's frustrating. That's all I'm saying. So to recap what we have talked about, before we really start drilling down, we use copper for everything. Everything in our homes, in the electrical grids that power our homes and our cars, and everything else. We cannot live without it. And we're going to need lots more, like a disturbing amount of copper going forward. Not just as a great hope, as something that is mandated with governments across the world. It's happening. Whether we want it to or not, whether it can actually happen or not, it's happening. And we can't replace it. We wish we could. We can replace it with crappy aluminum, but that's not going to be the answer. And that's not something we're going to do. So really, the planet has put itself in a really precarious position. Demand is off the charts, as we've seen. And supply is in big, big trouble. Even if demand didn't go up at all, I would love this investment because supply is really, really at a crossroads here. But here we are. Now, this might seem like a bleak outlook for the future, but in the meantime, we can make money off of it, or we can just watch it go by. I've made my decision, and what I'm going to do is tell you how I'm playing it, and then you can decide how you want to play it. Again, this is not advice, even though it's going to sound like it. But I am not telling you exactly what equities I am in. I don't go that deep with it, but I am going to be transparent about pretty much everything else. So you take this as you will. For starters, I am willing to hold this for as long as it takes. I'm bullish on copper for the decade of the 2020s. I'm not going to be like a lot of people on YouTube and try to predict when it's going to happen, because those people always fail. And I can't risk my money on that. So I'm just going to sit back and play the long game. It's always a good day in long game land. We'll be talking about that on the next podcast episode, spoiler. But I understand it's worth the wait. And I'm not afraid to put my money over here, because it's weird. Like, a lot of people think when they're taking money out of their account, their bank account, and putting it into stocks like this, that if an emergency happens, they won't have enough money. Well, no, you just take it out of your stocks. You're not spending your money on anything. You're just relocating it into something that actually has upside. Your bank account does not. That's the way I look at it. So I am not afraid to make moves like this because no matter how big or small my bank account looks at the time, I always know the worst case scenario, I can just cash out and put money back over on the other side. So I go forward with full confidence. Now, there are several ways to play this. Just like there's several ways to play gold and silver, I would say there's a bit fewer ways to play copper. We're going to talk about those. And I'm going to build my positions over time. If I can, I'm going to add to them and buy on the dips, just like I do with crypto. I'm that bullish on copper. I'm probably as bullish on copper as I am gold, maybe more. It's very possible. So I have no problems adding to these positions over time or possibly discovering new ones. But I will always take profit when necessary. I did not get in at the bottom of this past run, so I have not been able to take profit as of now. But when that day comes, as bullish as I am for the next 10 years, I am even more bullish on my system, and I will not deviate. If you're wondering how to take profit in these commodities, go back to the very last video I did on crypto with the green font in May 2021. I'm using the same playbook. The upside is right about the same, and so I'm playing it the exact same way when it comes to my money management. So if you're ever curious on how I'm doing that, I'm not going to go over it for the third time. Just go back and watch the crypto video. You should watch that video anyway. It pretty much spans over all of these contrarian investment, commodity, crypto, positions that I'm taking now and into the future. Also, I understand there's a real bear case here. I'm not stupid. I mean, look, price ran up lately, not because we were using copper and building a bunch of things. It's just is on the anticipation of that someday being the case, and combined with the fact that China was very smart and they bought up a bunch at this price. So they're one of the few countries that are not going to have to worry about this later. So the combination of those two things are what really led to this past run-up in copper and a lot of commodities, for that matter, a lot of base metals, a lot of everything. But people will get impatient. They're already getting impatient. That's why you're seeing this drop. A lot of retail investors thought we would be building back better by now. We're really not. And they're going to cash out and save their money for another day. They're going to get in later. And that's fine, because something we could also have, and you guys know me, I think this is just a matter of time before this happens, we may also have a market crash. And if we have a big market crash, what do you think that does to the price of commodities? Do you think a bunch of companies and countries are going to be out there building a bunch of stuff? Do you think people are going to be running out and buying electronic vehicles? Do you think we're going to be in this huge hurry to turn to a less efficient form of energy? No, that's not how it works. Everybody consolidates. They downsize. They squirrel away their money so they don't have to fire all their employees. This is not the time to grow. This is not the time where people are building things. It's just the opposite. And so if that happens, the price of all commodities are going to go down pretty hard. But I also know, and I always feel like I'm one of the few people that realizes this, that I could be wrong about all of this. We're all trying to play this predicting game. Almost everybody sucks at it. I'm probably no different. And regardless of which scenario happens, the bull case or the bear case, in the immediate future, I still want to make sure I'm positioned for the run, regardless. I am okay with owning stocks now that have a decent chance of going down in the near future, because I don't want to miss out on what I think is certainly going to be a huge run in the more mid to distant future. Does that make sense? I would rather lose money on my stocks now than miss out on the run. I'm okay with it. But when you play the long game, you're automatically okay with that. You don't really care, because I'm not playing for 2022, 2023. I'm playing beyond that. So let me tell you how I am playing it. Now, there are three main ways that I know of to participate in copper. You have ETFs and royalties. You do not have physical copper. I suppose you do, but that would take up a lot of space, so don't do that. But there's better ways. Now, there are two ETFs that I know of for copper. One tracks just the general price, and one is a basket of some of your bigger miners. So it's good to have things like that, and it's good to have royalty companies, because this is a very offensive sector, and you need semi-defensive plays in a very offensive sector. Your most offensive plays here are going to be your mining stocks, by far. Anything can happen. They could be in countries that don't really play well. They could be even in counties, like states within countries that decided that mining is environmentally bad, therefore, you shouldn't do it, and the whole cash cow shuts down. This is what happens in these places. They're very volatile. Copper is very hard to mine. The mines are typically very old. A lot of them are in the mountains. It's just you have a lot of things working against you, but the upside is really, really big. And I also have a feeling if the price of copper really, really goes up the way I think it is, that a lot of these smaller mining companies are just going to get bought up anyway. So I like them. I'm just not in them yet. I'll talk about that. The third way, and this is the way that most people I've seen don't really talk about, and it's crazy because I think they're great opportunities. They're gold miners that have copper offsets. Some of your largest copper mines in the world are actually gold mines. It's just gold and copper like to hang out together. And so if you have a big gold mine with a lot of land, you tend to dig up a lot of copper too, depending on where you are. Now, in my mind, this is for the real G's right here, the real long game players, because I have a feeling when the price of copper really starts to shoot up and everybody wants in, even institutions, you would think they're not a bunch of rank amateurs, but even they are. They're going to look for companies with copper in the name. Plain and simple. This just happened with silver. A lot of mining companies out there, even if they just had a little bit of silver, put silver in their name because, even though it's a big rush of dumb money, you still want that dumb money flooding into your company. And if you don't put yourself on these people's radar, you're going to miss out. But I do think long term that these are going to be some of the best values out there. Because I already love gold, but having all that extra upside with their copper is just icing on the cake for me. I love it. So I'm invested in one thing from this category and one thing from this category. So let's talk about how I'm going to deal with these as well. Let's just kind of map everything out. So the way I do it is I have two positions now, like I just said. Now, my other two positions, at least coming up next, are going to be smaller mining stocks, and I am only going to get them if price drops further from where it is right now. And then I have another one or two on my radar that I can get like bargain basement prices, and I'm only interested in these stocks at super cheap prices. So let's say if the global downturn does happen, well, then all of a sudden now those are going to be on my radar for later. And I will let my technical analysis point the way. It's not perfect, but it's better than most, and so that's what I'm going to use. Two tranches are something we've talked about before. Let's say that you like to have $200 per position. If you're going to invest in a new stock, $200 is about, average for you. And you're not maybe comfortable with that. You can put in $100 now, and if price goes down to a certain level, put another $100 in and average down. I'm a big fan of doing that normally. But especially some of these, entering 2 or 3 positions right now is kind of out of your price range. That's fine. You can use tranches. That's how you still participate, but get around the whole price end of it. But I'll guarantee you this. This is where you and I probably differ, even though I have told you to do this. I have a Google sheet on every single position I have and every single position I'm looking at. I don't mess around. I got Google Sheets on top of Google Sheets. Fuck with me. I have everything mapped out the way I want. I have price levels that if those price levels get hit, then they become officially on my radar, and then it's a matter of my charts telling me when to enter. I have all my take profit points lined up. I take my money and my investments very seriously, and I'm going to make sure that my stupid, dumb emotion does not get to play a part when it's all said and done. Every move I make is already planned out when it comes to my investing. It's crazy. Like in life, I don't have a plan hardly ever. I just kind of go where the winds go. But in business and in investing and in trading, that is not the time to screw around. And I realize that. And I practice what I preach. I can only suggest you do the same. In conclusion, we just can't live without copper. We would go probably centuries back in time if we didn't have it. It is that vital to the way we live and the way we want to live in the future. And that future demand is, it's not a question of if it is. We already know it is because we've been told it is. And then supply is not going to catch up. There's no way. There's just no way. We would almost have to invent something else to replace it. But that one thing does not exist currently. That's just how it is. I'm not going to waste time. I do think we're going to have a little bit of bearish action in commodities, especially coming up right now. And over the summer, most likely, if I'm just playing the predictions game. But I could also be wrong, so screw it. And you shouldn't waste your time either, because maybe your prediction's wrong too. This is not something you want to miss out on. Bottom line, get to researching, get everything mapped out, and execute. Start taking action if this is something you really want to be a part of too. Just because it could be a long time before things materialize does not give you the green light to go super slow. It could be a very long time before we see anything like this again. Do not allow yourself to miss out. Hey, I got a question for you. Did you enjoy this video? Did you enjoy the subject matter? Do you like the way I explain things? Oh boy, you're going to love my new podcast. Let me tell you, the 10-Minute Contrarian is out. We are a few episodes deep already. It is getting rave reviews, and we talk about things like we just talked about today. We go deep into commodities. We go deep into crypto. We go deeper into long-term buy and hold investments. And you can either just go subscribe to it on the podcast player of your choice, or you can just keep it right here. Subscribe, hit the bell. All my podcasts go to YouTube also. And if you're wondering, not once have I ever lined these things up correctly. But that's just how it goes, though. You know this channel. You love this channel. Subscribe to this channel. We still have videos coming. We have a lot of podcast episodes coming. You're going to want to take part. But taking part is one thing. Executing is a whole different thing. So start putting in the work. Don't be afraid. Make things happen and go get it.